How exactly did a mid-tier cable actress with a mattress on the floor suddenly land a British prince, a global platform, and a victim narrative that temporarily fooled half the civilized world? We're stripping away the multi-million-dollar PR spin, and what you'll see is a calculated, invitation-only pipeline run through a private club that literally screens out the desperate. These are the Soho House secrets that Meghan Markle desperately tried to bury. The 89-man dossier and the silence that shook Montecito. The audacity of a rebrand never ceases to amaze. One minute, Meghan flooded Instagram with sepia-tone nostalgia about Soho House being her safe space, pushing a warm, innocent, full-circle moment for her new lifestyle brand. The next minute, conservative commentator Candace Owens reportedly went scorched earth, allegedly getting her hands on leaked Soho House membership files that reduced that safe space narrative to absolute rubble. According to the whispers ripping through media circles, these documents didn't show a young creative sipping overpriced matcha while working on her lines. They allegedly listed 89 wealthy, powerful, elite men. And Meghan's name supposedly sat right next to them, not as a peer, not as a fellow power broker, but under the specific, devastating label of VIP companion. Let that sink in. A VIP companion. In elite circles, that terminology drips with unspoken expectations. It heavily implies a curated arrangement designed to provide high-level members with polished, charismatic company. When this story broke, it required an immediate, aggressive response. Meghan built her entire post-royal identity on weaponized victimhood and furious litigation. This was the woman who dragged the British press to court over a handwritten letter to her estranged father. She sent legal dogs after podcasters. She issued rapid-fire corrections over lighting choices. But when the 89-man dossier rumor dropped, the silence was loud. Dead, absolute, terrifying radio silence. No furious denials. No cease-and-desist letters fired off to Owens. No tearful sit-downs on a billionaire's patio furniture. Just a panicked vacuum. That total paralysis confirmed every suspicion the public held. When a serial litigator goes quiet, it means they are utterly terrified of the discovery phase. Suing meant opening the vault, and whoever held those 89 names held the keys to the absolute destruction of the Duchess of Sussex brand. The delusion required to post nostalgic Soho House pictures while this bomb ticked in the background was staggering. She tried to get ahead of the leak, framing the club as a cozy memory before the receipts could paint it as a professional hunting ground. If you thought the silence over the dossier was embarrassing, wait until you meet the man who held the guest list, the Marcus Anderson shadow play. You cannot decode the Meghan Markle playbook without understanding the architect. Enter Marcus Anderson, the global membership director of Soho House. Marcus wasn't just a friend who helped her pick out throw pillows in Toronto. He was the ultimate gatekeeper to the 1%. His entire job description revolved around curating rooms, connecting billionaires, and ensuring ultra-wealthy men had the exact right atmosphere and company when they paid their premium dues. When Meghan, pulling down a modest salary on suits, suddenly started popping up in rooms filled with global power brokers, it happened entirely through Marcus. He operated as her shadow guide. He showed up at her royal wedding, lurked in the background of her New York baby shower, and popped up at Disneyland. But his most crucial role happened behind closed doors. Royal insiders confirmed that when Prince Harry wanted to meet the actress, he didn't slide into her DMs or call her agent. He went straight through Marcus. Marcus arranged the blind date in a private Soho House room. He controlled the environment. This was high-stakes matchmaking executed by a professional social fixer. Meghan's PR team always painted this era as a whirlwind romance born out of pure fate. The reality felt entirely transactional. She lacked the public status, the wealth, and the pedigree to access those rooms organically. Marcus provided the skeleton key. The visual evidence of them together always featured Meghan clinging to him with that manic, overly grateful smile, the look of a woman who knew exactly who held her meal ticket. She played the part of the sophisticated muse perfectly, using his access to elevate her entire existence. But polished gatekeepers can only hide so much, especially when enemies start collecting photographs. Piers Morgan and the Live TV ambush.
Piers Morgan suddenly whips out a collection of photos that look like they came straight from Meghan Markle's personal panic vault.
I don't want to be doing another bloody segment on Meghan Markle and Harry, right?
And in that instant, millions of people watching realized the whole victim narrative might actually be the biggest performance she's ever delivered.
And then the rest of it was, and all the racism claims turned out to be bullshit. The mental health claims were all of it was bullshit, designed to damage and attack the royal family, the monarchy, and all of it.
Look, Meghan's built an entire brand around being this down-to-earth girl just trying to make rent in LA. But those photos painted a wildly different picture, one where her social calendar looked less struggling actress and more exclusive billionaire events.
The studio lights glared, the cameras rolled, and Piers Morgan unleashed a masterclass in petty revenge. Long before she snagged her prince, Meghan grabbed drinks with Piers, charmed him for a few hours, and then brutally ghosted him the literal second she met Harry at Soho House. You do not cross a media veteran and expect peace. Piers waited years, biding his time through the Oprah interview, the Netflix documentary, and the endless stream of self-serving podcasts. Then, on a random Tuesday, he pulled out the receipts. He casually held up leaked photos from her Soho House past, dismantling her struggling, relatable girl image in real time. These weren't blurry college snapshots. These were glossy, undeniable images of a woman deeply embedded in the lap of luxury. She flashed perfectly veneered smiles on private planes, clinked champagne flutes in ultra-exclusive lounges, and draped herself over wealthy men. This was a billionaire lifestyle funded by someone else's wallet. Her suit salary barely covered the taxes on the circles she ran in. The public watched her entire carefully constructed identity crumble. The girl who claimed she grew up eating at Sizzler and struggling to make rent was suddenly exposed as a high-end scene chaser. Piers didn't even need to scream. The photographs did the heavy lifting. The second-hand embarrassment was lethal. Viewers immediately saw the grift. She abandoned the people who helped her the second they stopped being useful, a pattern that defined her entire ascent. The leaked images proved she viewed relationships entirely as stepping stones. And if the private jets looked suspicious, the floating networking hubs tore the lid completely off the narrative. The yacht girl whispers and the Mediterranean ghost. The internet never forgets, and the yacht rumors simply refuse to die. Long before she packed her bags for Kensington Palace, whispers circulated about young actresses being flown to Mediterranean hotspots under the guise of hospitality. These luxury yachts served as floating, invitation-only networking hubs for ultra-wealthy businessmen. You needed an invite, and you needed to provide engaging, polished company. When Piers dropped those photos, the timeline locked into place. Critics dragged up old forum posts, blind items, and deleted social media snapshots showing Meghan geographically adjacent to these exact floating hubs. The math never worked. How did an actress with minimal credits afford endless summers in the most expensive harbors on Earth? The visual cues in those old photos were screamingly obvious. The desperate, wide-eyed posing, the clinging to men she barely knew, the intense desire to look like she belonged on a boat that cost more than her entire life's earnings. She scrubbed her past clean, deleting her blog, erasing old friends, and wiping her digital footprint the second the ring went on her finger. But the yacht whispers lingered because they perfectly explained the gap between her bank account and her passport stamps. She couldn't afford the lifestyle, so she found the men who could. It was the ultimate main character syndrome move, casting herself as a glamorous jet-setter while desperately hiding the men paying for the fuel. But the most devastating blow didn't come from Candace Owens or Piers Morgan. It came from the man sharing her bed. The spare betrayal.
Prince Harry himself accidentally handed critics exactly what they needed. When Prince Harry released Spare, he likely intended to present a vulnerable, intimate portrait of their love story, not hand critics a roadmap to the parts of Meghan's past she preferred to keep blurry. Yet, that's exactly what happened. In several passages, Harry casually mentions that Meghan treated Soho House like a personal sanctuary, a place she relied on so heavily it almost functioned as a second home. He describes their early dates, private dinners, hidden corners where they met discreetly, and the staff who seemed unusually familiar with her routine. For most couples, these details would feel romantic, but for Meghan, they raised a glaring contradiction. She'd repeatedly insisted she barely used the club and only chose it for convenience. Yet, Harry's recollections portrayed a woman deeply rooted in that world long before they met.
Harry, who's that standing next to the Queen? Is that a servant? That's what Harry wrote in his book Spare.
Prince Harry's memoir, Spare, was designed to elicit global sympathy. Instead, it operated as an accidental confession manual that burned his wife's lies to the ground. For years, Meghan stared into television cameras, batted her heavily lashed eyes, and swore she knew nothing about the royal family, barely understood British culture, and hardly knew what Soho House was. She played the naive American role flawlessly. Then Harry picked up a pen. In his desperate attempt to sound romantic, he detailed how Soho House was basically Meghan's second home. He wrote about their secret dates, the hidden corners she knew perfectly, and how the staff treated her like royalty long before she had the title. He painted a picture of a woman deeply, fundamentally entrenched in the elite London networking scene. Harry essentially published a roadmap of her deception. The contradiction was hilarious and deeply embarrassing. She spent millions on PR to convince the world she was an outsider, and her own husband proudly documented her status as the ultimate insider. Readers caught the discrepancy instantly. He exposed her as a woman who commanded the room at the exact club she claimed she barely frequented. It was a PR nightmare wrapped in a hardback cover. She trained him to attack the press, but she forgot to proofread his memories. And that desperate need to command the room didn't stop at private clubs. It bled onto the global stage in the most cringe-inducing physical ways imaginable. The body language of a dictator. You can fake a backstory, but you cannot fake body language. Meghan's public appearances morphed into agonizing studies of extreme physical control. Look at the tape. She didn't just walk with Harry, she steered him. The infamous claw grip became her signature move, her hand locked onto his back or arm, physically maneuvering a grown prince like a lost toddler at a shopping mall. When the cameras rolled at charity events, the mask routinely slipped. At an award ceremony, Harry respectfully stepped back to let another woman on stage. Meghan, terrified of losing the center mark, aggressively nudged her way forward, practically hip-checking the woman to ensure she remained the focal point. The physical entitlement was repulsive. She consistently barged into rooms first, breaking royal protocol, desperate to suck the oxygen out of the space. When she wasn't the one speaking, her face became a tragedy of suppressed rage. The darting eyes, the rigid jaw, the forced, painful smiles that evaporated the millisecond she thought the camera panned away. She treated staff like disposable props, snapping at aides and gesturing wildly when she didn't get immediate, unquestioning deference. She wanted the deference of a queen with the accountability of an influencer. It was main character syndrome manifested as physical aggression. She physically pushed her way to the top, dragging a completely emasculated Harry in her wake. Clout chasing and the Bogart betrayal. The limits of her ambition didn't stop at wealthy men and naive princes. It trickled all the way down to her dependents. Meghan built an early, aggressively curated Instagram presence around being a deeply empathetic, earth-loving animal rescuer. She plastered her feed with adorable, highly filtered photos of her rescue dog, Bogart. She even squeezed a humble brag origin story out of him, claiming Ellen DeGeneres organically bumped into her at a pet shop and practically ordered her to adopt the dog. Bogart provided the perfect innocent prop for a mid-tier actress desperate to look universally beloved. Then the royal pipeline opened up. The second she secured her golden ticket to Kensington Palace, the compassionate animal lover mask disintegrated. Meghan packed her designer bags, boarded her flight to London, and simply discarded the traumatized rescue dog. She broke up a bonded pair of dogs, leaving Bogart behind because he suddenly became an inconvenience to her new, hyper-elite lifestyle. She possessed all the money, resources, and private travel options in the world to bring him along. She chose abandonment. The hypocrisy of preaching global compassion while coldly ditching a loyal pet for a tiara gave everyone massive second-hand embarrassment. You can always judge a person's core character by how they treat creatures who can offer them absolutely nothing in return. Bogart outlived his usefulness as an Instagram aesthetic, so he got cut from the cast. Her complete lack of maternal instinct or basic loyalty toward an animal she claimed to love proved her empathy was entirely performative. And that performative, manipulative streak reached a fever pitch when she decided to mock the very institution that gave her a global platform, the royal mockery and the suit's receipt.
Medieval times, dinner and tournament. It was like that. Like I curtsied as though I was like... Pleasure to meet you, Your Majesty.
Meghan, who played paralegal Rachel Zane, did a small, understated curtsy in front of Rick Hoffman, who played attorney Louis Litt. This only proves she knew perfectly well how to curtsy, long before she met Harry.
Meghan bet the house on the world suffering from collective amnesia, but it didn't quite work out for her. During their multi-million-dollar Netflix pity party, she stared directly into the camera and dramatically recreated her first meeting with Queen Elizabeth. She threw her arms out, plastered a grotesque, exaggerated smirk across her face, and performed a deep, mocking, medieval times-style bow. "Pleasure to meet you, Your Majesty," she giggled, playing the clueless American who thought the royal family operated like a tacky dinner theater in Orlando. Sitting right beside her, Harry looked visibly horrified, his eyes deadening as he watched his wife mock his grandmother's life's work. The audacity to disrespect a dying monarch on global television was a PR nightmare of epic proportions. She fully expected the audience to buy the